Carlos lived in a small village surrounded by big mountains. Every day he worked as a mountain guide, helping people climb the steep and dangerous peaks. It was hard work, but Carlos loved it. The mountains were his home. He knew every trail, every rock, and every risk. But life wasn't easy for him or his team. Their climbing gear was old and falling apart. Ropes were frayed, harnesses barely held together, and helmets had cracks. They didn't have much money, so they fixed things with duct tape and whatever they could find. Carlos didn't let that stop him. He cared more about keeping climbers safe than having shiny new equipment. "If our gear fails, we can't," he'd tell his team. "We have to be stronger than the mountain." He dreamed of getting better tools someday, tools that wouldn't break under pressure. With good gear, his team could take on bigger challenges and help more people explore the mountains safely. One morning, as Carlos packed his worn backpack, he noticed someone climbing alone on a steep cliff nearby. The person moved awkwardly, like they weren't used to the terrain. Carlos frowned. That part of the mountain was dangerous, even for experienced climbers. Something told him to keep an eye on the climber. Little did he know this decision would change everything. For him, his team, and the entire village. Carlos grabbed his rope and started climbing toward the lone climber. The higher he went, the more worried he became. The person was moving too slowly, slipping on loose rocks and struggling to find handholds. "Hey!" Carlos called out, trying to get their attention without startling them. "You okay up there?" The climber glanced back, startled. I think so," they replied, their voice shaky. But moments later, disaster struck. The climber's foot slipped, and they lost their grip, dangling precariously over the edge of the cliff. Their fingers clung desperately to a narrow ledge, but it was clear they wouldn't last long. Carlos acted quickly. He anchored his rope to a sturdy rock and lowered himself closer to the climber. His heart raced as he inched his way down the steep wall. One wrong move could send both of them tumbling into the abyss below. "Don't let go," Carlos shouted, his voice firm but calm. "I'm coming." He reached the climber just in time. Using every ounce of strength, he looped a makeshift harness around them and secured it to his rope. The frayed rope groaned under the weight, but Carlos didn't hesitate. "On 3, pull yourself up," he instructed. 1, 2, 3. With Carlos guiding from above, the climber managed to scramble onto a safer ledge. Both collapsed, breathing heavily, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and relief. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind whistling through the cliffs. Finally, the climber looked at Carlos, tears streaming down their face. "Thank you," they whispered. "You saved my life." Carlos shook his head. "Just doing my job. You're safe now, that's what matters." As they made their way back down the mountain together, Carlos noticed something unusual about the climber. They carried themselves differently now, more confident, despite the scare, and there was an air of importance about them that didn't quite match their earlier clumsiness. But Carlos didn't dwell on it. All that mattered to him was getting the climber safely back to the village. When they finally reached the base of the mountain, the climber stopped and turned to face Carlos. "I owe you more than I can ever repay," they said sincerely. "My name is Amelia Hart. Please, don't forget that." Carlos blinked, unsure why the name sounded familiar. "I'm just glad you're okay," he replied humbly. Little did he know, this meeting would lead to something far greater than he could have imagined. Later that evening, as Carlos sat by the fire in his small cabin, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about Amelia. Her name lingered in his mind, tugging at a memory he couldn't quite place. Curious, he pulled out his phone and searched for Amelia Hart. What he found left him stunned. Amelia wasn't just any climber. She was one of the most famous explorers in the world. Known for her daring expeditions to remote corners of the globe, she had written best-selling books, starred in documentaries, and inspired millions with her stories of adventure and survival. Carlos stared at the screen, scrolling through photos of Amelia standing atop icy peaks, trekking through dense jungles, and speaking at international conferences. How had someone like her ended up dangling off a cliff in his little corner of the mountains? The next morning, Amelia returned to thank Carlos again. This time, she wasn't alone. She brought coffee and snacks from the village store. "You didn't have to do this," Carlos said, surprised by the gesture. "I wanted to," Amelia replied with a warm smile. "People like you don't get thanked enough. You risk your life every day for strangers, even when you don't have much yourself." They talked for hours, sharing stories about their lives. Carlos told her about his team, their struggles with old gear, and his dream of giving them better tools. Amelia listened intently, asking questions and nodding thoughtfully. "What frustrates me most is knowing we could take on bigger challenges if we had reliable equipment," Carlos admitted. "But there's no money for upgrades. We make do with what we have." Amelia's expression softened. She glanced around the room, taking in the patched-up jackets hanging on hooks and the worn boots by the door. Then she looked at Carlos, who spoke with such passion about helping others explore the mountains safely. "You remind me why I fell in love with climbing in the first place," Amelia said quietly. "It's not about fame or records. It's about connection. To the land, to each other, to ourselves." Before leaving, Amelia asked one final question. "If you could change one thing about your work right now, what would it be?" Carlos hesitated, unsure how honest he should be. "New gear," he finally said. "For my whole team. It would mean everything." Amelia smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Consider it done." Carlos laughed nervously. "You don't have to say that. I'm just grateful you're safe." But Amelia wasn't joking. As she walked away, she pulled out her phone and began making calls. Little did Carlos know, his simple wish was about to become reality, in ways he never dreamed possible. A few weeks later, Carlos was leading a group of climbers up a familiar trail when one of his teammates came running toward him, breathless and grinning. "Carlos, you won't believe this," the teammate exclaimed. "There's a truck at the village center, filled with gear, brand new ropes, harnesses, helmets, everything." Carlos frowned, confused. "What are you talking about? Who sent it?" "No idea," the teammate replied. "But there's a note on top. Says it's for you and the team." Dropping what he was doing, Carlos hurried back to the village. Sure enough, parked in the middle of the square was a massive delivery truck surrounded by curious villagers. Inside were piles of top-of-the-line climbing equipment. Gleaming ropes, sturdy harnesses, lightweight backpacks, and helmets so new they still smelled of fresh plastic. On top of the pile lay an envelope addressed to Carlos. He opened it carefully and read aloud. "Dear Carlos, you showed me that true strength isn't measured by fame or wealth. It's measured by how we care for others. This equipment is my way of saying thank you for saving my life and inspiring me to give back. Use it well. The mountains are lucky to have you as their guardian. With gratitude, Amelia Hart." The crowd erupted into cheers, but Carlos stood frozen, overwhelmed. He hadn't expected anything like this. Not from Amelia, not from anyone. Later that afternoon, Amelia herself arrived unexpectedly, stepping out of a rental car with a smile as wide as the horizon. "I wanted to see the look on your face," she said, laughing as Carlos approached her, speechless. This is too much," Carlos stammered, gesturing at the truck. "We can't accept all this." "You already have," Amelia replied firmly. "And trust me, it's nothing compared to what you've given me. A reminder of why I started climbing in the first place." She spent the rest of the day helping Carlos and his team unpack and organize the gear. As they worked, she shared stories of her own struggles early in her career, how she'd once relied on borrowed equipment and second-hand tools. "It's hard to chase your dreams when you're fighting just to stay safe," Amelia said softly. "I don't want anyone else to feel held back like that." By the time the sun set, the entire team had gathered around a bonfire to celebrate. For the first time in years, they felt equipped, not just with gear, but with hope. With the new equipment, Carlos and his team could finally tackle challenges they'd only dreamed of before. Steep cliffs that once seemed impossible were now within reach. Longer routes that required reliable gear became part of their regular climbs. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was mental. Confidence replaced fear, and ambition replaced hesitation. Carlos took full advantage of the upgraded tools to mentor younger guides in the village. He taught them advanced techniques, shared survival tips, and emphasized the importance of teamwork. Under his guidance, these newcomers learned not only how to climb safely but also how to lead others with care and responsibility. Gear matters, Carlos often said during training sessions, but it's nothing without heart. Remember why we do this: to help people experience the mountains without risking their lives. The impact rippled through the community. With better equipment, the team attracted more climbers from nearby cities, and even tourists from other countries. Word spread about the skilled guides and their unmatched dedication to safety. Soon, the small alpine village became a popular destination for adventurers, bringing much-needed income to local businesses like lodges, restaurants, and shops. Amelia stayed in touch, following the team's progress with pride. She visited several times over the next year, joining them on climbs and documenting their work for her social media platforms. Her posts showcased not only the breathtaking beauty of the mountains, but also the resilience and unity of Carlos's team. "These guides are heroes," Amelia wrote in one post. "They're proof that when you give people the tools they need, they can move mountains, literally." Her words resonated worldwide. Donations poured in from supporters eager to help underserved climbing communities. Other explorers began reaching out to Carlos, asking how they could contribute to similar initiatives elsewhere. Through it all, Carlos remained humble. To him, the real reward wasn't fame or recognition. It was seeing his team thrive. Young guides who once doubted themselves now led groups with confidence. Climbers who arrived nervous left smiling, carrying memories they'd cherish forever. One evening, after a particularly successful climb, Amelia sat with Carlos by the fire. "You've done something incredible here," she said, gazing at the stars. "Not just for your team, but for everyone who looks up at these peaks and dreams of standing on top." Carlos shook his head. "We couldn't have done it without you. You gave us a chance we never thought possible. And you reminded me what really matters," Amelia replied. "People helping people, that's what makes the world go round." Their bond deepened over shared meals, laughter, and stories under the vast mountain sky. Though their lives were vastly different, they found common ground in their love for the mountains and their desire to make a difference. For Carlos, the gift of equipment had become more than just a donation. It was a symbol of trust, gratitude, and possibility. It showed him that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark change far beyond what anyone imagined. Years passed, and Carlos's team grew into one of the most respected guiding operations in the region. Their reputation for safety, skill, and heart drew climbers from around the world. But more importantly, they became a beacon of hope for underserved communities everywhere. Carlos never forgot where he came from or how far they'd come. He often reminded his team that their success wasn't just about them. It was about everyone who had supported them along the way. "We're standing on the shoulders of those who believed in us," he'd say. "Now it's our turn to lift others up." Inspired by Amelia's generosity, Carlos started a foundation to help other mountain guides in need. The organization collected donations of gear and funds to train new guides in remote areas. It also promoted sustainable climbing practices, ensuring that the mountains remained pristine for future generations. Amelia continued to champion their cause, using her platform to highlight stories of resilience and collaboration. She spoke at conferences, wrote articles, and partnered with outdoor brands to expand access to climbing for underprivileged communities. Together, she and Carlos proved that even the smallest acts, like saving someone on a cliffside, could create ripples of positive change. One day, while leading a group of young climbers, Carlos paused at a scenic overlook. Below them stretched the jagged peaks and lush valleys that had shaped his life. "This is why we do what we do," he told the group. "Not just for the thrill or the views, but for the connections. To each other, to the land, to something bigger than ourselves." The climbers nodded, their faces glowing with awe and determination. Among them was a teenager named Sophia, whose family ran a small lodge in the village. She had grown up watching Carlos and his team work tirelessly to protect the mountains. And now, inspired by their example, she dreamed of becoming a guide herself. Someday, Sophia said softly. I want to be like you, Carlos, to show people the beauty of these mountains and keep them safe while doing it. Carlos smiled, feeling a surge of pride. You already are, he replied. Just remember, every step matters. Every hand you hold, every life you touch, it all adds up. As the years went by, Carlos's story spread far beyond the mountains. People across the globe heard about the guide who saved a famous explorer and, in turn, transformed an entire community. His journey became a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and collaboration. And yet, Carlos remained unchanged. To him, he was still just a man who loved the mountains and cared deeply for the people who climbed them. One evening, as he stood on a ridge overlooking the valley, Amelia joined him. They didn't speak for a long time, simply taking in the majesty of the landscape. Finally, Amelia broke the silence. You've changed the world, Carlos, she said quietly. In ways I don't think even you realize. Carlos chuckled, shaking his head. No, Amelia, we did this together. You gave us the tools, we built the rest. She smiled, her eyes glistening. Then let's keep building. There's still so much more to do. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Carlos felt a deep sense of peace. He knew their work would continue long after they were gone, carried forward by the countless lives they touched. Because when you give with an open heart, the ripples never truly stop. Carlos and Amelia's story is a powerful reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness, generosity, and collaboration can create ripples of positive change, touching lives far beyond what we might imagine. Whether it's saving someone in need, sharing your resources, or simply believing in someone's potential, every action matters. And now it's your turn to be part of this movement. Think about the people in your life who have inspired you with their bravery, compassion, or willingness to give back. Maybe it was a teacher who believed in you when you doubted yourself, a neighbor who shared tools or food during tough times, or a stranger whose selflessness restored your faith in humanity. These moments shape us. They remind us of our shared humanity and the incredible impact we can have on each other's lives. So here's how you can keep the ripple effect going. Start small but meaningful. You don't need grand gestures to make a difference. Sometimes, all it takes is noticing someone struggling and stepping in to help. Offer a hand to someone in need. Lend your time to mentor someone younger, or volunteer in your community. Acts of kindness, no matter how small, add up to big changes over time. Speak up when it matters. Like Carlos risking his own safety to save Amelia, use your voice and actions to stand up for what's right, even if it feels uncomfortable. If you see someone being treated unfairly or notice someone in danger, don't look away. Advocate for those who may not have the strength or platform to speak for themselves. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's as quiet as saying, I'm here for you. Invest in others' potential. Amelia saw potential in Carlos's team and used her resources to amplify their abilities. Who in your life could benefit from your support? Mentor a young person, sponsor a student's education, or encourage someone chasing their dreams. A little belief can go a long way in helping someone realize their potential. Challenge stereotypes. Too often, society judges people based on appearances or circumstances, like assuming Carlos couldn't achieve greatness because he lived in a small village. Break that cycle by looking beyond surface-level differences. Treat everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of their background. Remember, heroes come in all forms, and you never know whose actions might spark a revolution. Share the story. Stories like Carlos and Amelia's remind us that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they work together. Share this tale with friends, family, coworkers, or online communities. Inspire others to reflect on the power of gratitude, collaboration, and giving back. You never know who might need to hear this message today.